How many times has civilization been reset? This question sounds like science fiction, but what if reality is stranger than any fiction? What if humanity has walked this path before, building cities, creating technologies, reaching peaks of knowledge, only to have it all wiped from Earth by catastrophic events, leaving behind nothing but myths and broken stones? In the ocean depths lie sunken cities we've only recently discovered. In the Amazon jungles hide ruins of vast settlements that could house millions. In the world's deserts stand megalithic structures built with precision that challenges our understanding of ancient technology. Earth's geological layers preserve evidence of catastrophes so massive they could destroy all life in hours. Every culture on Earth, from indigenous American tribes to ancient Mesopotamian civilizations, preserves stories of a great flood, of times when the sky fell, of entire continents vanishing overnight. Coincidence or collective human memory of real events? Archaeologists find artifacts that don't fit the official timeline. Geologists discover evidence of catastrophic climate changes capable of erasing entire civilizations. Geneticists reveal dramatic reductions in human population, moments when our species balanced on the brink of total extinction. Before we continue, write in the comments which country you're from and what you think about the possibility of previous civilizations on Earth. Let's turn to the facts. Planet Earth has existed for 4.5 billion years. Modern humans appeared about 300,000 years ago, but written history spans only the last 5,000 years. This means 98% of our species' history remains virtually unknown territory. If we compressed Earth's entire history into one day, modern humans would appear 4 seconds before midnight, and our written history would fit into the last tenth of a second. Göbekli Tepe in Turkey dates back 11,000 years, 6,000 years older than Stonehenge, and 7,000 years older than the Egyptian pyramids. This complex of monumental stone structures was built by people we considered primitive hunter-gatherers. Stone blocks weighing up to 15 tons were quarried, transported, and erected with astonishing precision. Then, for unknown reasons, the entire complex was deliberately buried. At Baalbek in Lebanon stand the largest worked stone blocks in the world. 3 of them, known as the Trilithon, weigh 800 tons each. They were quarried a kilometer away, raised 7 meters high, and perfectly fitted together without mortar. Even modern cranes would struggle with such monoliths. These aren't exceptions. From Peru to Japan, Egypt to Polynesia, we find megalithic constructions demonstrating engineering mastery that seems incompatible with our understanding of ancient capabilities. Many are built from stones cut so precisely you can't insert a knife blade between them. They're oriented to astronomical directions with mathematical accuracy and contain encoded knowledge about Earth's proportions and celestial distances. What if civilization's history isn't linear? What if humanity has risen many times to peaks of knowledge and technology, only to be thrown back into the Stone Age by catastrophic events? Even the most durable human-made materials deteriorate. A modern city left unattended would disappear almost completely within 10,000 years. After 100,000 years, only stone structures and perhaps ceramics would remain. After 1,000,000 years, even these traces would be buried under meters of sedimentary rock or erased by erosion. But here's the critical question. Have we ever looked for such anomalies? Until recently, the answer was no. But in 2018, scientists Gavin Schmidt and Adam Frank asked, what would traces of an industrial civilization look like in the geological record after millions of years? Their conclusions were surprising. Such a civilization would leave specific traces: sharp spikes in atmospheric CO2, enrichment of sedimentary rocks with synthetic compounds, changes in carbon isotopic composition. All these signs would be preserved for tens of millions of years. And interestingly, some of these anomalies are indeed found in ancient layers. More than 200 cultures worldwide preserve legends of a great flood. This isn't just similar stories, it's strikingly identical descriptions of a catastrophic flood that destroyed the previous world and forced humanity to start over. In the Mesopotamian epic of Gilgamesh, written 4,000 years ago, the hero Utnapishtim tells how the gods decided to destroy humanity with a great flood. He was commanded to build a huge ship and take aboard pairs of every living creature. Rain poured for 6 days and nights. Waters rose above the highest mountains, and all humanity perished except those in the ark. Sound familiar? The biblical story of Noah is just a later version of the same ancient tale. But this story isn't limited to the Middle East. Ancient Indian texts describe how Vishnu warned King Manu of an approaching flood. In Chinese mythology, Emperor Yao fought a great flood threatening to swallow the world. Greek myth tells of Deucalion and Pyrrha. The Aztecs believed the current world was created after the previous one was destroyed by flood. The Hopi described 3 previous worlds destroyed by catastrophe, including great floods. Can this be mere coincidence? Science can offer an explanation. About 11,700 years ago, Earth experienced the end of the last ice age. Global temperatures rose sharply. Huge ice sheets covering much of North America, Europe, and Asia began melting at incredible speed, leading to a catastrophic 120-meter rise in sea level. Imagine the scale. Continental coasts where people lived were flooded hundreds of kilometers inland. Entire ecosystems were destroyed within generations. Fertile lowlands where early communities thrived vanished underwater. But it wasn't just gradual sea level rise. One of the most dramatic events occurred about 13,000 years ago when enormous glacial Lake Agassiz, containing more water than all modern Great Lakes combined, suddenly broke through its ice dams. Billions of tons of water rushed into the ocean in days or weeks, causing global sea level to rise several meters. For people living then, this must have seemed like the end of the world. Around the world, archaeologists are discovering sunken settlements and structures on continental shelves, now underwater. Off India's coast lie ruins of Dwarka, a legendary city described in ancient texts. In the Mediterranean, sunken Bronze Age ports have been found. Off Japan's coast, underwater structures have been discovered that some researchers consider man-made. The Great Flood may not be myth, but collective human memory of a real catastrophe that reset our civilization thousands of years ago. Let's focus on the most compelling mysteries. At Sacsayhuaman in Peru, this massive fortress above Cusco features walls built from enormous limestone blocks, some weighing over 100 tons. The blocks are cut into complex polygonal shapes with so many faces and angles that their fitting seems mathematically impossible. Yet they're connected so tightly that even a sheet of paper won't fit between them. No mortar was used, only perfect stone-to-stone fitting. When Spanish conquistadors arrived in the 16th century, they were amazed by these structures. They asked locals who built Sacsayhuaman. The Inca answered it wasn't them, but an ancient race of giants who lived long before their time. On Easter Island stands the Ahu Vinapu platform, built from massive stone blocks fitted together with the same polygonal precision as Sacsayhuaman's walls. The striking similarity in construction techniques between two places, separated by thousands of kilometers of Pacific Ocean, suggests ancient connections or a common source of knowledge. In Egypt, the Great Pyramid of Khufu consists of approximately 2.3 million stone blocks, each weighing an average of 2.5 tons. Some granite blocks in the King's Chamber weigh up to 80 tons. These granite blocks were delivered from quarries located 800 kilometers south. The pyramid was built with such precision that its base deviates from a perfect square by only a few centimeters across 230-meter sides. All these structures share one common feature. They demonstrate levels of engineering mastery and organization that seem incompatible with the technological capabilities of their time. If megalithic structures make us doubt ancient builders' primitiveness, there are artifacts that completely shatter our understanding of past technological development. One object is so incredible that scientists spent over a century trying to understand its true purpose and complexity. The Antikythera mechanism, the world's oldest known analog computer. In 1901, Greek sponge divers discovered an ancient Roman shipwreck off Antikythera Island that sank about 2,000 years ago. Among amphorae and statues, they found a corroded bronze lump initially ignored as insignificant debris. But when this mass split open, a series of bronze gears was revealed inside. Decades of research were needed to understand what this mechanism represented. X-ray studies showed a system of 30 preserved bronze gears, though originally there were probably more. The mechanism was enclosed in a wooden case about 30 by 15 by 8 centimeters and covered with inscriptions containing usage instructions. Modern research using high-resolution computed tomography showed this was an astronomical calculator of incredible complexity. The device could predict the positions of the sun, moon, and planets in the sky years in advance. It calculated lunar and solar eclipses with astonishing accuracy. It even accounted for the moon's elliptical orbit using epicyclic gearing, technology believed to have been invented only in the 15th century AD. The mechanism was created around 100 BC, in an era when most calculations were done by hand. The next device of comparable complexity appeared only in medieval astronomical clocks, 1,300 years later. This means technology for making precise mechanical devices existed in the ancient world, but was almost completely lost after the fall of Greco-Roman civilization. What else was lost in that technological collapse? When we talk about civilization resets, we must understand forces capable of erasing not just cities and technologies, but life itself. Earth's history isn't smooth evolution from simple to complex. It's a series of catastrophic interruptions, each destroying most existing life and forcing evolution to start practically from scratch. Over the past 540 million years, there have been 5 great mass extinctions, each erasing 70 to 95% of all species on Earth. The most destructive occurred 252 million years ago at the Permian-Triassic boundary, destroying 96% of all marine species and 70% of terrestrial vertebrates. But the most famous mass extinction occurred 66 million years ago, when an asteroid about 10 kilometers in diameter slammed into Earth off the coast of modern Mexico. The impact released energy equivalent to 1 billion atomic bombs. A shockwave spread across the entire planet. Tsunamis hundreds of meters high swept coasts. Debris ejected into the atmosphere rose into space, then fell back as burning rain, causing global fires. Dust and ash blocked sunlight for months, possibly years, plunging the planet into cold and darkness. This event destroyed the dinosaurs who had dominated Earth for 160 million years. 75% of all species disappeared. But this extinction allowed mammals, small creatures living in dinosaurs' shadow, to occupy freed ecological niches and ultimately lead to the emergence of primates and humans. Without this cosmic catastrophe, humanity probably would never have appeared. Now let's talk about an event that nearly destroyed humanity itself. 74,000 years ago on Sumatra Island, the Toba supervolcano erupted. This was one of the most powerful volcanic events in the last 25 million years. The eruption ejected 2,800 cubic kilometers of ash and rock into the atmosphere, 100 times more than Vesuvius's eruption that destroyed Pompeii. Consequences were catastrophic. Global temperatures fell 5 to 15 degrees Celsius. The planet plunged into volcanic winter, possibly lasting 10 years, followed by a period of global cooling lasting 1,000 years. Vegetation died. Animals depending on this vegetation went extinct. And humanity, just beginning to spread from Africa, found itself on the brink of extinction. Genetic research shows human population shrank to just a few thousand individuals. This is called a population bottleneck. All modern humans on Earth are descendants of this small group of survivors. Humanity's genetic diversity is strikingly low compared to other primate species. Because of this event, we all, regardless of race or nationality, are close relatives because our ancestors passed through this bottleneck 74,000 years ago. The Toba event shows how fragile humanity's existence is and how close we came to complete extinction long before any civilization appeared. Few legends have captured human imagination as powerfully as the story of Atlantis, a sunken continent, an advanced civilization destroyed overnight by catastrophic events. The story of Atlantis was first recorded by ancient Greek philosopher Plato around 360 BC in his dialogues Timaeus and Critias. Plato describes a powerful island empire located beyond the Pillars of Hercules, the modern Strait of Gibraltar. Atlantis, according to his description, was the center of an advanced civilization with magnificent temples, palaces, and a system of concentric canals. But their arrogance angered the gods, and in one night and day of catastrophic earthquakes and floods, the island sank into the sea, disappearing forever. Most historians view Plato's account as philosophical allegory, a warning about the dangers of hubris and moral decay. But could there be a real historical event behind this legend? One place has attracted special attention: the Greek island of Santorini. About 3,600 years ago, this island was torn apart by one of the most powerful volcanic eruptions in human history. The eruption was so strong that the island's center collapsed into the sea, forming an enormous water-filled caldera. Before the eruption, Minoan civilization flourished on Santorini, one of the most advanced Bronze Age cultures. The Santorini eruption destroyed Minoan settlements on the island and likely caused tsunamis that devastated coasts throughout the Mediterranean. Could memory of this catastrophe, passed down through generations, have transformed into the legend of Atlantis? But there's a more provocative theory. What if Atlantis represents not one specific place, but collective memory of many advanced coastal civilizations that existed at the end of the Ice Age and were then destroyed by rising sea levels? As we discussed earlier, sea level rose 120 meters over several thousand years, submerging millions of square kilometers of coastal plains, the most fertile and populated lands of that time. If advanced societies with trade networks, monumental architecture, and technological achievements existed on these plains, All their traces now lie underwater. Perhaps Atlantis isn't a specific place to be found, but a reminder that entire chapters of human history may be hidden beneath the waves, awaiting discovery. Not only cosmic catastrophes and geological events can reset civilization. Sometimes nature's most dangerous enemy is itself. When climate changes so rapidly and dramatically that entire empires crumble, millions die, and society collapses back into chaos. Let's start with one of history's most mysterious civilization catastrophes: the collapse of classic Maya civilization. Between 600 and 900 AD, the Maya built one of pre-Columbian America's most advanced civilizations. Their cities like Tikal, Copan, and Palenque were home to tens of thousands. The Maya developed a complex writing system, created an accurate calendar, built impressive pyramids and temples. They were skilled astronomers and mathematicians who developed the concept of zero independently. But around 850 AD, something went terribly wrong. Over the next 150 years, the great Maya cities were abandoned one by one. Population declined 80 to 90%. Monumental construction ceased. The complex political system collapsed. By the 10th century, jungles had swallowed cities that were once centers of power and culture. What caused this catastrophic collapse? Archaeologists and climatologists now have the answer: drought. Studies of lake-bottom sediments in the Maya region show that between 810 and 910 AD, a series of severe droughts occurred. Rainfall decreased 40%. Rivers dried up. Water reservoirs on which Maya cities depended ran dry. Agriculture, the foundation of Maya civilization, collapsed. Famine gripped cities. The political system, based on rulers' ability to ensure prosperity, lost legitimacy. Wars began over remaining resources. Ultimately, people simply abandoned cities, seeking survival in wetter regions. But the Maya weren't the only civilization destroyed by climate change. About 4,200 years ago occurred an event archaeologists call the 4.2 kilo-year event, a global climate anomaly characterized by drought in tropical and subtropical regions. This event coincided with the fall of several great civilizations simultaneously. Egypt's Old Kingdom, the age of pyramid builders, suddenly collapsed. The Akkadian Empire in Mesopotamia, history's first empire, vanished. The Indus Valley Civilization, one of the Bronze Age's most advanced, fell apart. Now fast forward to a later historical period. The Bronze Age collapse, about 3,200 years ago. This was one of ancient history's most mysterious events. Within 50 years, almost every major city in the eastern Mediterranean was destroyed. The Hittite Empire, dominating Anatolia, disappeared. Mycenaean civilization in Greece collapsed. Cities like Ugarit, Megiddo, and Hazor were burned to the ground. Egypt survived, but was seriously weakened. What caused this collapse? Modern research points to climate change as the primary factor. Pollen analysis and sediment cores show sharp rainfall reduction during this period. Drought lasted 300 years, the longest in the past 10,000 years in this region. Agriculture collapsed. Cities couldn't feed their populations. Famine caused mass migrations. Refugees moved throughout the Mediterranean, destabilizing existing states. Economic and political systems couldn't withstand the stress and collapsed. Climate cataclysms teach us an important lesson. Civilization is fragile. It depends on stable climate, reliable harvests, functioning trade networks. When these foundations are undermined by climate change, even the greatest empires can collapse within a generation. On the Giza Plateau, in the shadow of the Great Pyramids, lies one of the ancient world's most enigmatic monuments, The Great Sphinx, with a lion's body and human head, has gazed eastward for millennia. According to official Egyptology, the Sphinx was carved from limestone rock about 4,500 years ago, during Pharaoh Khafre's reign of the 4th dynasty. But in the 1980s and 90s, a group of researchers challenged this dating, presenting evidence that could completely rewrite our chronology of ancient Egypt and perhaps all human civilization. At the center of these disputes is the question of erosion. When you look at the Sphinx, especially its body and the walls surrounding its enclosure, you see deep vertical grooves and wavy erosion patterns. These patterns differ from erosion on other Giza Plateau monuments. Pyramids and temples known to have been built by the 4th dynasty show typical desert wind and sand erosion, horizontal layers caused by abrasive action of wind-blown sand. But the Sphinx's erosion looks completely different. It looks like water erosion. Geologist Robert Schoch from Boston University conducted detailed studies of the Sphinx in the early 1990s. His conclusions were shocking. Schoch concluded that the erosion pattern on the Sphinx's body and surrounding enclosure walls was consistent with prolonged exposure to heavy rainfall, not wind and sand. But here's the problem. Egypt has been an arid desert for the past 5,000 years. For the Sphinx to undergo such intense water erosion, it must have existed during a period when the region received significantly more rainfall. Climatological research shows that the last wet period in Egypt ended about 10 to 12,000 years ago, at the end of the last ice age. If Schoch's analysis is correct, this means the Sphinx was carved at least 9 to 10,000 years ago, possibly even earlier. This makes it at least twice as old as official Egyptology claims. These findings sparked a storm of controversy, but several other geologists independently studied the Sphinx and came to similar conclusions about water erosion. If the Sphinx is truly much older than we thought, the implications are enormous. It would mean an advanced civilization existed in Egypt capable of creating monumental sculpture thousands of years before the first pharaonic dynasties appeared, and then this civilization disappeared, perhaps destroyed by the same climate changes that turned Egypt into a desert. When European explorers first penetrated the Amazon basin in the 16th century, they returned with incredible tales of huge cities hidden in the jungle. Spanish conquistador Francisco de Orellana reported encounters with densely populated settlements along riverbanks with houses stretching for many kilometers. But when subsequent expeditions returned to the same places, they found only virgin jungle. The cities had disappeared as if they never existed. For centuries, these accounts were dismissed as fantasies and exaggerations. The Amazon was considered virtually uninhabited before Europeans arrived. But now we know the early explorers were right. The revolution in our understanding of pre-Columbian Amazonia began in the last 2 decades with the application of LiDAR technology, aerial laser scanning. LiDAR allows seeing through the dense jungle canopy and creating detailed maps of the ground surface. And what this technology discovered completely changed our conception of ancient Amazonia. Beneath the green ocean of jungle lie remains of vast urban complexes, roads, canals, earthen pyramids, and geometric patterns carved into the landscape. These structures testify to the existence of complex societies with large populations and advanced technologies. In the Bolivian part of Amazonia, in the Llanos de Moxos region, LiDAR surveys revealed over 600 kilometers of roads connecting numerous settlements. These roads weren't just jungle trails, but engineering structures up to 20 meters wide, raised above flood level. Along the roads were discovered artificial mounds where houses and temples were built. Archaeologists estimate that 100,000 to 300,000 people lived in this region at its peak, comparable to the population of Europe's largest cities at that time. What happened to these civilizations? Why did European explorers find only sparse, scattered tribes where densely populated cities had thrived just decades earlier? The answer is tragically simple: disease. When Europeans arrived in the Americas, they brought smallpox, measles, influenza, and other infectious diseases, to which the indigenous population had no immunity. These diseases spread faster than the Europeans themselves, transmitted along trade routes from tribe to tribe. Entire societies were destroyed before Europeans saw them. Without people to maintain cleared territories, agricultural systems, and roads, the jungle quickly returned. Within a few generations, dense forest covered cities and fields. The jungle that Europeans considered virgin wilderness was actually secondary forest grown on the ruins of a vanished civilization. While we've explored terrestrial catastrophes that could reset civilization, there's another factor often overlooked, but potentially equally dramatic: our sun. The star that gives us life can also be a source of destruction. Solar activity follows cycles of various lengths, and these cycles have profoundly influenced Earth's climate and human societies throughout history. The most famous is the 11-year solar cycle, but there are longer-term cycles too. The most significant for our topic is the eddy cycle, a period of approximately 2,300 years, during which solar activity fluctuates between high and low states. Research shows these prolonged periods of low solar activity often coincide with cold periods on Earth, and, importantly, with crises in human civilizations. One of the most famous periods of low solar activity is called the Maunder Minimum, which lasted from 1645 to 1715. During this period, sunspots virtually disappeared. This period coincided with the coldest phase of the Little Ice Age in Europe. Winters were so severe that the Thames in London regularly froze, and fairs were held on the ice. Crops often failed to ripen, leading to famine and social unrest. But solar activity can threaten civilization, not just through climate change. There's an even more immediate and catastrophic threat: solar superstorms. On September 1st, 1859, occurred an event astronomers call the Carrington Event. A massive solar flare ejected an enormous quantity of charged particles toward Earth. When these particles reached our planet, they caused the most powerful geomagnetic storm in recorded history. In 1859, humanity depended on very little electrical technology. The Carrington Event was more curiosity than catastrophe. But what would happen if a similar storm occurred today? Modern civilization completely depends on electrical grids, satellites, computers, and telecommunications. A solar superstorm on the scale of the Carrington Event today could cause a global catastrophe. Induced currents in power lines could knock out transformers worldwide. Replacing these transformers would take months or years, leaving entire continents without electricity. In 2012, Earth narrowly avoided catastrophe. A massive coronal mass ejection swept through Earth's orbit. But fortunately, our planet wasn't there at that moment. If it had hit us, consequences would have been comparable to the Carrington Event. Solar cycles remind us that our civilization exists at the mercy of cosmic forces we barely control. While archaeologists search for traces of the past in stone and earth, geneticists have discovered another kind of record written in our very DNA. The genetic code of every human on Earth contains the history of our species, written in sequences of 4 chemical letters. And this history tells an amazing and disturbing truth. Humanity has repeatedly balanced on the brink of total extinction. These moments when our population shrank to critically small sizes are called population bottlenecks, and they provide direct evidence that our species has survived several events that could well have reset any existing civilization. Humanity's genetic diversity is surprisingly low compared to other primate species. 2 chimpanzee groups living in different parts of Africa have greater genetic diversity than the entire human population of the planet. Low genetic diversity indicates that at some point in our past, human population shrank to a very small number of individuals, creating a bottleneck effect. The most famous and well-documented bottleneck occurred about 74,000 years ago, coinciding with the Toba supervolcano eruption on Sumatra. Analysis of mitochondrial DNA shows all modern humans descend from a population numbering only 3,000 to 10,000 breeding individuals during this period, meaning a total population perhaps 10,000 to 30,000 people on the entire Earth. But more recent genetic research has revealed an even more ancient and dramatic population collapse. About 900,000 years ago, long before modern Homo sapiens appeared, our ancestors' population shrank to an incredibly small number. Researchers calculated that for about 100,000 years, our ancestors' breeding population was only about 1,280 individuals. What these bottlenecks tell us about civilization cycles is clear. Humanity and our ancestors have repeatedly faced events that reduced our population to critically small sizes. In these moments, any existing culture, technology, or knowledge would have been almost completely lost. Survivors would have been too busy struggling for existence to engage in anything but basic survival. And when population eventually recovered, which could take thousands of years, the new society started practically from scratch. Genetic bottlenecks are resets not just of population, but of culture, technology, and possibly civilization. We're completing our journey through forgotten chapters of human history. Now, we must ask the most important question. What does all this mean for us? We've explored megalithic structures that challenge our understanding of ancient technologies. We've examined mass extinctions, climate cataclysms, solar storms, and genetic bottlenecks. We've seen how entire civilizations vanished under ocean waters, were buried under desert sands, or were swallowed by jungles. And through all this runs one common thread. Civilization is fragile. No matter how advanced we are, we're always just one catastrophe away from returning to the very beginning. So how many times has civilization been reset? The honest answer? We don't know exactly. Official archaeology recognizes only one continuous line of development from the first stone tools millions of years ago to modern global civilization. But the evidence we've examined hints at a more complex picture. Perhaps there were periods when human societies reached higher levels of complexity than we assumed, only to be thrown back by catastrophic events. Each time, survivors started over, perhaps retaining vague memories of the past in the form of myths and legends. But regardless of how many times this happened in the past, one fact remains certain. It can happen again, possibly in the near future. Our modern civilization faces multiple threats, any of which could become the catalyst for the next reset. Climate change is accelerating. Sea levels are rising. Extreme weather events are becoming more frequent and intense. We're losing biodiversity at an alarming rate. Nuclear weapons continue to pose an existential threat. Pandemics can spread worldwide in weeks. And as we discussed, a solar superstorm could knock out our electrical infrastructure for years. What makes our civilization particularly vulnerable is our interconnectedness and specialization. We've created a global system where food is produced in some places, processed in others, and consumed in third locations. Supply chains span the entire world. Few people today know how to produce food, build shelter, or create tools from raw materials. We rely on complex infrastructure, electrical grids, water systems, transportation networks. If this infrastructure fails, most of the population couldn't survive long. We're more advanced than any previous civilization, but we're also, perhaps, more fragile. So what can we do? The first lesson from the history of civilization cycles is humility. We shouldn't assume our progress is inevitable or irreversible. Each generation must actively work to preserve and transmit knowledge. We must diversify our systems to make them more resilient to shocks. Instead of relying on centralized power grids, we should develop distributed energy sources. Instead of global supply chains vulnerable to disruption, we should support local production. The second lesson is the importance of knowledge preservation. One reason we know so little about possible previous civilizations is that knowledge wasn't effectively transmitted through catastrophes. Most of our modern knowledge is stored digitally on servers requiring constant power and maintenance. If a global infrastructure collapse occurred, most of this information would be lost within days. We must create more durable archives, physical knowledge repositories that can survive catastrophes and be accessible to future generations. Some visionary projects are already working on this. The Svalbard Global Seed Vault stores seed samples from around the world in permafrost. The Long Now Foundation is creating documents designed to last thousands of years. The Rosetta Project works to create an archive of all human languages on media that could last centuries. The third lesson is the necessity of global cooperation. Many threats we face are global in nature. Climate change recognizes no national borders. Pandemics can spread from one country to all others in weeks. Asteroids or solar storms threaten the entire planet simultaneously. Only by working together as a species can we hope to mitigate these threats. Finally, the history of civilization cycles should give us a new perspective on our place in the universe. We're not the crown of creation, the final result of progressive history. We're one iteration, possibly in a long sequence of human societies, each of which rose, flourished, and ultimately fell. This isn't cause for pessimism, but a call to action. Understanding that civilization can reset, we can work to prevent it from happening to ours, or at least prepare future generations for recovery, if it does. Humanity has demonstrated remarkable resilience throughout its history. We've survived ice ages, supervolcanoes, pandemics, wars, and countless other crises. Each time we've recovered, adapted, and continued. But each time the price was high. Millions or even billions suffered and died. Knowledge and culture were lost. Progress was reversed. If we can learn anything from these cycles, it's that preventing catastrophe is always better than recovering from it. So what's the answer to our original question? How many times has civilization been reset? Perhaps several times. Perhaps many times. Or perhaps we're the first to reach such a level of complexity. But more important than the answer to this question is what we do with this knowledge. Will we learn from the past and work toward creating a more resilient future? Or will we repeat the mistakes of those who came before us, leaving future generations only ruins and legends to decipher? The choice is ours, and it's a choice we must make, not as separate nations or groups, but as a unified species sharing one fragile planet. Because in the end, we're all connected by threads of history reaching back to the very origins of our species, and we all bear responsibility for ensuring this story continues into the future, learning from the past, but not being chained to it. Thank you for joining us on this journey through forgotten chapters of human history. If this exploration has made you think about our place in Earth's long story, subscribe to our channel for more captivating content about the mysteries of our world.